Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into the fascinating world of forest gardens.
Right. Sometimes called nourishing forests or edible forests.
Exactly. Imagine a garden that works like a woodland edge, multi-layered, full of perennial edible plants. It's a really cool concept.
It is. It's about, working with nature, mimicking those forest ecosystems instead of the usual rows of annuals, trying to create something more self-sustaining.
And to really get into how this works, we're looking at a specific project. It's at Châteauneuf-du-Pape, the CNDP, in Belmont, France.
Ah, yes, the CNDP. It's a rural associative cultural space. So like a community hub focused on culture, ecology, social stuff.
And they want to turn part of their land, about 5 hectares, into one of these forest gardens.
And we've got some great sources for this. There's a really detailed study on the CNDP project itself.
Okay.
Plus some info on another garden in Severn, and even a report looking at the economics of forest gardens.
So the mission today is really understand the CNDP plan, but also see how it fits into this wider picture.
Precisely. Get the specifics and the context.
Right. So CNDP, 5 hectares, includes prairie and old orchard. What's driving them to create a forest garden there? It seems like more than just food.
Oh, definitely. Food is part of it, of course. But they're aiming broader. They want spaces for, relaxation, definitely boosting biodiversity, and even, interestingly, creating spaces for artistic expression within the garden itself.
Artistic expression, okay.
Yeah. Apparently, the initial ideas were a bit vague, but they did some workshops, had discussions, really tried to nail down their objectives.
And that led to this plan with 4 distinct zones.
That's right. 4 areas, each with a different feel and function.
Okay, let's unpack those. First up is the welcoming rural area. Sounds like a new entrance.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the east side. The idea is a clear, inviting entry point. They're planning a light structure for welcoming people.
Okay.
A big vegetated parking area, so not just asphalt, and even a spot for camping during events.
And the art aspect comes in straight away here.
It does. There's a plan for a huge clearing, like 50 meters across.
Wow, 50 meters.
Yeah, specifically for artistic structures.
Yeah.
And it'll be sheltered by a windbreak hedge, partly evergreen.
Makes sense for a rural spot.
And there's a plant-covered pergola marking the start of the path to the main chateau building.
So setting a tone right from the start, nature, art, welcome.
Pretty much. And that windbreak, that's functional too, creating microclimates. Key forest garden thinking.
Okay, zone 2. The mandala of the 5 senses. This is near the chateau. Sounds quite different.
It really does. It's circular, arranged around an existing well. They're talking wattle paths, raised beds, kind of reminiscent of medieval gardens, maybe.
Oh, interesting.
But the focus is sensory. A laboratory of flavors and scents, they call it. Lots of different plants, vegetables, medicinal, aromatic, flowers, mostly perennials.
So really engaging touch, smell, sight.
Exactly. And some fruit trees and shrubs mixed in too. It's really highlighting that, therapeutic side of being in nature.
And I saw notes about it being educational and adaptable.
Crucial points, yeah. An educational hub, learning about the plants. And the design is meant to be flexible so they can tweak it as they go. Plus, its central location connects everything.
Right, a connecting point. Okay, moving outwards then to the enchanted forest. The name says a lot.
Doesn't it? You picture somewhere dense, shady, wooded.
Yeah.
And that's the plan. Significant multi-strata planting, really getting that forest layer structure going.
Mimicking the natural forest.
Exactly. Canopy, understory. Maximizing light, creating habitats, winding paths to explore it all.
And clearings too?
Small ones, yeah. For biodiversity, more edge habitat. And again, the art comes in. Plans for installations, cabins, benches, tables scattered through it.
So it's a mix of ecology and culture again. What about the edible side in this zone?
That's more towards the western part. They're planting fruit tree terraces using the slope of the land.
Smart.
And pergolas for climbers, vines, kiwis, that sort of thing, using the vertical space.
Right.
And a big pond down at the lowest point.
Oh, nice. For wildlife.
Specifically, yeah, fauna and flora support. And there's a long high fruit hedge planned as a boundary.
More edibles?
Definitely. And they're even including willow and dogwood for basketry.
Linking to craft.
And visitors are actually encouraged to forage to discover the edible plants there.
That's fantastic. Really interactive. Okay, the last zone mentioned is the Gourmet Grove. Fewer details on this one.
Yeah, the main source isn't as specific here, but the name Gourmet Grove kind of gives it away.
Focus on food, useful plants.
Seems like it. And specifically mentioning guilds, plant communities that help each other out.
Right. Companion planting on a bigger scale?
Exactly. The example they give is an apricot and plum tree guild, with things like rosemary, comfrey, wild strawberries underneath or nearby, plants working together.
Okay, that paints a really vivid picture of the different zones. But how do they actually plan to build all this? It's ambitious.
It is. It's a phased plan spread over 4 years.
4 years, okay.
And it's driven by 2 big collective work days each year. So community involvement is absolutely key.
Makes sense for an association. So what happens in year 1? Laying the foundations.
Pretty much. Planting part of that big windbreak hedge for the clearing, getting the first fruit trees in the ground in the mandala and the grove, clearing the first path so people can see the layout start to emerge, and importantly, digging the 2 ponds.
Get the water features in early.
Yeah, let those ecosystems start developing.
Okay, year 2. Building on that.
Correct. More work in the mandala around, the braided beds, a wooden terrace, planting perennials,
Right.
planting shrubs along that entrance path, developing the ponds based on what they learn in the first year.
Adapting as they go.
Exactly. And a big step in year 2 is planting the main fruit hedge and the taller trees for the enchanted forest, really starting to build that vertical structure.
Okay, so things start to look more like a forest then. Year 3. Filling in the gaps.
You could say that. Finishing off the windbreak and fruit hedges. Building the pergolas and getting the climbing plants in.
Adding more layers.
And really developing the gourmet grove, adding the herbaceous layer, ground cover, bushes, shrubs, bringing those guilds to life, and establishing the dedicated educational space.
Got it. And the final year, year 4, focus on the entrance.
Yes. Developing that new site entrance and the parking area. That needs admin work first, funding too.
Right, practicalities.
Building the welcome cabin.
Yeah.
And then more planting trees and shrubs in the camping area, parking, and adding density to the enchanted forest.
Filling it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they even mentioned maybe expanding the mandala if they have the resources, so some flexibility built in.
It sounds really well thought out, practical for relying on volunteers and work days. But what about, the life of the garden? The activities?
Yeah, that's where it connects back strongly to their cultural and artisanal mission. They have short-term and long-term plans.
Okay, short-term first.
Engage people right away with those work days. Clearing paths actually helps test how people move through the space and integrating it into their cultural program immediately. Things like storytelling walks, exhibitions, performances, readings, all happening within the garden as it grows.
That's brilliant. Using the space from day 1, basically.
Exactly.
And longer term, say 15 years down the line when it's more mature.
The vision is for it to be a really versatile hub, hosting workshops on foraging, processing the harvest.
Right, using the produce.
But also continuing as a venue for performances, concerts, exhibitions, and supporting artisanal activities, providing materials like the willow, maybe herbs, and being a space for workshops and training.
So really embedding it into everything they do.
That seems to be the goal, a living embodiment of their values.
Are they planning to connect with others too, partnerships?
They are. They plan to link up with local places like the Agricultural High School in Moran and a nature management program, BTS GPN.
For what purpose?
Monitoring. Keeping track of the flora and fauna that establish in the garden. It provides great data, plus hands-on experience for the students.
Win-win. Connects the project outwards.
Yeah, builds expertise and community links.
This CNDP project sounds amazing, really tailored to them. How does it stack up against other forest gardens you mentioned? Are they all like this?
Well, that's what's interesting, the diversity. Take the one in Saverne, the Jardin Forêt de la Licorne.
Okay.
It shares some goals, collaborative, perennial, gourmet focus, education, community. But it's smaller on city land, meant to complement other urban gardens.
So different context, different scale maybe.
Definitely. The urban setting versus CNDP's rural one really shapes things.
Any others that show different priorities?
Oh, yeah. There's the Forêt Gourmande in Dijon. That one sounds much more experimental. Huge number of species, like 1,000.
1,000, wow.
Yeah, big focus on education, guided tours. Then you've got the other end of the spectrum, like a rational forest garden in Schijndel in the Netherlands.
Rational, what does that mean?
Fewer species planted in alleys for easier harvesting. The main goal there is efficient, sustainable food supply.
So more geared towards production efficiency.
Exactly. Shows the trade-offs, biodiversity richness versus ease of management and harvest.
A fascinating contrast. Any others?
Briefly, there's the Forêt Jardin de l'Étang, part of a larger farm aiming for self-sufficiency, even using animal grazing. And they're specifically trying things out on poor soil.
So tackling different challenges, it really seems each project is unique.
Very much so. Tailored to place, people, purpose.
And what about the money side? You mentioned a report on economic viability. Forest gardens aren't usually thought of as commercial ventures.
Well, this report looked at the Beck-Helwin farm, which is commercially oriented, and the findings were actually quite promising.
Really?
Yeah, decent hourly productivity. The report suggested the potential is probably even higher than current figures show as the systems mature and people figure out the best ways to manage and market.
So maybe not the main driver for CNDP, but it shows these systems can potentially be economically productive too.
Absolutely. It adds another layer to the benefits: ecological, social, cultural, and potentially economic resilience for local areas.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful, really getting under the skin of the CNDP plan and seeing the bigger picture. It's such a rich project, isn't it? Weaving ecology, culture, community together in that rural setting.
It really is. You've definitely got the shortcut now to being well-informed on this one. It shows that blend of practical design, community power, and long-term thinking.
So here's something for you, our listener, to think about. We've seen all these different approaches: biodiversity havens, food systems, community hubs. How could initiatives like these forest gardens, help make our own communities, whether they're rural or urban, more resilient, more vibrant? And maybe, what role could you play in sparking something similar where you are?
Good question to ponder.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.